One thing I did want to touch on is your journey or your path to get here. So when I
Mhm.
first found you, you were doing a lot of lettering, and it seems like now you're more leading with a lot of like your commentary or your words. So what
Mhm.
led to that transition? And do you miss, like, I know you're still lettering, but is there a reason that you kind of moved on from that to what you're doing now?
So, like I said, I went to school for design, and when I graduated, I went straight into freelancing. And so, shout out to all my freelancers. You know, that journey is, what it is.
It's tough.
Um, and so, I was doing that, and designing flyers, posters, and then when I was able to do stuff for like organizations, campaigns and things like that. And even though design is a creative job, it is still art for somebody else. You
Yeah.
know, I didn't have room to have like a what I call a PP, a personal project.
Okay.
You know, everything had to pay a bill. Everything had to take care of something financially, and so I didn't have as much wiggle room to be creative in the way that to explore. And clients, they need a sure thing, so they don't want to take too many risk. And let's try this. It's like, nah, I know
Yeah.
this work. I'm paying you to do this. Do this. And so lettering was basically my response to not having any personal project for me, for
Got
myself.
you. Okay.
It wasn't until I became an in-house designer for a local organization here in Memphis that I had room to even think about a personal project or just stuff that didn't require a meeting. It didn't require other people's opinions or a budget or any of those things. It could just be something that I could do. That I didn't have to answer anybody. I could just have ideas, do it, and that's it. And so, with my first check from being at that organization, I went to an art store, got me some, micron pens, got me some Sharpies, got a sketchbook, and literally just started sketching ideas. And a lot of my design work was type heavy, and so naturally just drawing the letters was like an easy transition to hand lettering. And so um, I would just letter anything. I would be out, with friends, and I would do a piece out with friends.
Yeah.
Or if something else is going on, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, let's do this. And I didn't really have a style per se, like that first year and a half. Like I was just excited to, be getting, my stuff off. Like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and I just had pages of just letters and words, and I was shared on Instagram as like an accountability type of thing. It's
Oh,
like,
okay.
I'm gonna show up every day,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna post this and do this. And that was when like lettering was like huge. This was like 2013,
Okay.
15, right there. And so, you had all the really pretty, elaborate, making letters out of coffee beans, and we do like
Yeah.
all of that, sparkles, and I'm like, ooh, this is nice. And so um, I saw those things, but I was like, oh, I kind of want to say something different. I want to express something different, and so I have a love for graffiti. I love, the hand painted signs on like the side of
Yeah.
buildings or on cars. Something that's very industrial. I love that, as well as I love calligraphy. So my first pieces, when I started to develop a style, um, came from my love of those things, and so been doing those things like ever since then. Um, but I also wanted my stuff to say something. I didn't
Yeah.
want my stuff to just be pretty. That's cool. And there's a place for that. In fact, there's so many people that are doing that, and people love it. I love it. I wanted to add to the lexicon of things to, pull from, or, to inspire. And so I would share those thoughts that I would have, and my love for, like, hip hop, urban life, black culture. I wrapped all of that up into my lettering, whether it was the style or the colors or what it was actually saying. And so what I was saying was just though. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think so. It's. I think a thunderstorm is on the way. So okay, we should be good.
Okay.
I couldn't go like act like that didn't happen. I was just
Yeah.
okay. But no.
You're talking about you wanted it to say things. You wanted it to mean more.
Yes. So I wanted my work to always say something, and it got to a point where people were resonating with what I was just saying just as much as they were the art. And I remember the first time I had just posted words, took a screenshot of something I did, and it got just as much like traction, just as much interest as the art that I was doing. And so I was doing both equally at one point. And during quarantine, when everybody was in the house, I would continue to share my perspective about the things that were going on at the time, whether it was like the injustice that was happening in the streets, or just the idea of, the pandemonium. And it's like, let's center ourselves, let's, be grateful for just things like that. And so people was, really resonating with my words. And so it transitioned from my artwork saying something to my words saying a very specific thing that people were resonating with. Yeah. And so it was to the point where, 60% of the stuff was my lettering, and 40 was, other things. And then it shifted to where most of the things that I was doing was about sharing inspiration, affirmations, hope, motivation, things like that. And I just recently did a poll in my stories on Instagram of like, the people who follow me now, what do they know me for? And almost overwhelmingly, it was like, oh, because you be inspiring me. Oh. You be helping me. And so cool. I'm like, wow. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of that particular journey of how it started to just be lettering, and people really resonated with the words, so much so that I just started screenshotting.
I said like tweets, yeah.
Yeah.
You probably started the movement of people just posting tweets.
Maybe I felt maybe I was early on in that, but it kind of just happened like that.
Do you ever feel any imposter syndrome when you're giving people inspiration and then maybe you don't feel that way for the day or something?
That's a great question. So all of the all of it, like maybe 97% of it is for me. Oh, okay. I started doing like little quotes and, sharing inspiration, when I was on Facebook, heavily. So like 2010, 2012, sharing thoughts on there. Some of the tweets that I've posted have been like rehashing stuff that I've done on Facebook, really, on this day you had said this, and I was like, oh, that was pretty good. And so I would like, rehash it, take some words out of it, because, but it's been, I'll say interesting as I share those things because I don't know if it's imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I feel like after I share it and it's out there, um, the response I'm still getting used to the response of how people are moved and affected by the things that I share. For me, it's like I need this because sometimes I haven't had a day that felt like it was about to take me out, and I can't get in that headspace. And so, how do I find the silver lining? And I'm like, if this could help me, let me just share that with somebody else. And so I can just, go on another day. But I would hear people, people have, DM'd me, their responses, and like, they'll be like, you just don't know how much you have helped me in this particular season, or they were going through something, or they were like, I needed to hear this right now,
Dang.
type of stuff. And it's still very overwhelming because I'm like, me? But also, I'm like, yeah, I said
Yeah.
that, and so it's interesting. I'm still getting you like, so fun fact, like, I don't know how long you've been watching or sharing, or like seeing the journey,
Yeah.
but in 2022, last year, I'll say probably March, I had gotten up to like maybe 17,000, which is like a huge, right,
Yeah.
following of people. And that's just been over, really the past 8 years. I don't know how long I've been
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram. But from 17,000 in March to the end of that year, and I had over 100,000 followers. Like, I gained over 80,000 followers in a year.
That's
And it was
insane.
literally because of words that I was sharing. I got overwhelmed. Like, a lot of people don't know this. So, like, I hide my likes.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I didn't start hiding them until they got, like, really big.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, like, I don't know what
Yeah.
happened. I don't know if I like something in the algorithm. I don't know why people were like coming to me the way they were
Mm-hmm.
last summer. But I have a post that is like over 500,000 likes.
Wow. For
Um,
words, for your words.
from
That's
from just from
crazy.
words, and
Yeah.
I have a few that were like a couple of 100,000. This is when I had maybe 25,000 at the time. Like, it was growing. I was getting thousands of follows a day. I was getting thousands of, and so I was overwhelmed by a lot of it. I'm like, is this me that's doing this? And so
Yeah.
to turn it full circle, or like to the point of like imposter syndrome, I think I didn't realize the impact of the words that I was sharing.
Mm.
I think for me, it was just, oh, well, I can not be in a bad mental place, so I can keep going, so I can stay upbeat and positive, just for me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, let me share this with, the world on Twitter and Instagram. But I didn't know that it was just as impactful to the people, so much so that they were like,
Showing up.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I think that may be something. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not imposter syndrome. I'm trying to think of other words, but there is something.
Yeah. There
Um,
is a feeling there.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for
But if you're
sure.
doing it for you, like if these words were to inspire you, then there's no reason to feel impostery because it's literally just the fuel for yourself. And if other people resonate with it, then they resonate with it, and that's just how it is. It's not
Yeah,
you acting like you didn't have to act like someone else to get where you were going. You were you.
Yeah,
Which
and
is the best way to be when in that situation.
and so the other side of that, right, is I was getting used to getting all these likes, and so then it was like if I, said something that was, very dear to my heart that I was thinking, and I put it out there, and then like nobody really, respond to it. Now I'm like, so it's like both
It's
of
hard.
those,
Yeah, it's a tightrope. It's tightrope. To walk.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's how I feel. Sometimes I'll be like, "This is my best work," and like, especially on like client projects, and you'll put it over. And I was like, "This is the perfect solution. This works great." And then you give it to them, and they're like, "No, not actually, none of this. Let's go over here." And you're like, "Ooh, that hurt a little bit." But it's like
Yeah.
when you're doing this kind of work, you got to realize the ego kind of has to take a back seat because
Yep.
if people are looking for something, then they got to feel themselves within that too. And if they don't, that's okay. But how do we get to help you and give you what you're looking for? So
Yep.
it's tough. Why the PPs, the personal projects, are so important.
Yeah.
All
Highly
right,
recommended. Get you
highly
a PP.
recommend it. That you a PP.